what's going on, guys? Welcome to Torch Tales, Stories Behind the Hood. I'm your host, Frank Vargas, aka Traveling Frankie. And again, I keep saying, you guys know how this works. So I sit here, someone sits there, we have a conversation, I record the whole thing, and I just post them somewhere. You guys know where it is. So I'm very excited today because I'm just going to learn about the welding industry. But at the same time, I'm going to learn about someone that's been in the welding industry for a while in the instructor side of things. So James Scott, James, thank you so much, brother, for saying yes. And by the way, I want to give him a plug because you guys know that I had a few episodes that the lighting just sucked. And he's the guy that said, hey, here's the link, try this lighting, which we have to the left and right of us. So thank you again, James, instructor at McFatter School. And I usually ask my guests, where the hell is that? Wherever we are. So where are we right now?
Well, right now we are in Davie, Florida.
All right.
Which is sort of like just south of Fort Lauderdale. Everybody's familiar with that. A little bit north of Miami for those who don't know Florida very well. But we're right in the,
okay,
the heat of the swamp, in other words.
That's pretty much it. It's only, in fact, I'm going to take my glasses because as I keep getting older, I just need to certain things not to look at my guests. So
Okay.
There you go. Just getting older, guys. So Mr. Scott is usually how we call him, all of us that have known Scott for a while. And in fact, I got confused earlier because I thought that was his first name, but I didn't know that it was James. James, let's start from the beginning because that's what I do. Where are you from?
I am from here. I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
We don't have many of those born and raised here in South Florida. I'm one of them. In fact, I think out of everyone you ask, you never hear, I was born and raised here. But I do know that even though you were born here, you kind of moved around and you've done some things and you kind of left, came back, that whole sort of thing, right? So did you go to high school or middle school here as well?
No, only elementary school.
Okay, where?
Village Elementary, which is in Sunrise.
Okay.
After that, my parents separated and my mom and we moved to North Carolina, so I was raised in North Carolina.
Gotcha. When you say raised, till what age?
Till I graduated high school.
Really? Mm-hmm. So while you were in high school, what was the future like for that kid there? What was he thinking of at 17, 18, whatever that age was?
Well, just like a lot of 17-year-olds, different generations, we don't know what we want to do. We have no idea.
Things haven't changed much,
no,
guys.
They haven't changed. So, but fortunately for me, there wasn't much work unless I wanted to be work on a farm, or actually my first job was construction on the beach because I lived on the beach.
Okay.
And I built, stilt houses, in other words.
Gotcha.
Like Cape Hatteras area.
Okay.
So I got a lot of experience with my first construction there.
So you're still 18 or so, right?
17, 18.
Gotcha.
I was also fortunate. My uncle was a contractor, so he had a construction company and allowed me to work in the summertime and make some extra money. So I got exposure
some hands-on kind of. Yeah.
Right. But when I was in high school, I took auto mechanics. That was the only type of extra classes we could take. And
gotcha.
I was fascinated with mechanics. I wanted to be an auto mechanic and so forth. My grandfather had basically left me his old 1970 Cutlass.
Okay. Supreme? Or
it was a standard.
Gotcha.
It had a 442 in it.
Okay.
But I didn't know how to work on it. So I took auto mechanics to try to learn and fix it.
Okay.
Because in the wintertime, which we don't have down here, that you can't do much.
We have summer and
you
summer.
can't work on much things outside. So the car sat. So while I was a junior in high school, I was trying to learn. I did everything. I couldn't get it to start.
Okay.
The distributor wasn't working. I tried to fix that. I tried to, what I could do, what I could.
And I'm guessing there was no YouTube back then, right? It's like, let me just Google some stuff.
It was a big textbook and colored old black and white pictures.
I'm not saying he's old. I'm just saying that it wasn't around yet.
It was a different era.
Yeah.
But anyways, I came home one day because we weren't really well off. I mean, we did okay, but we weren't really well off. I came home one day and the car was out of the parking lot, out of our house. And I'm like, what happened? My mom said, well, we needed the money, and this kid came up to my door and
there goes the car.
Me like $700 for it, and I need, I'm like, and I was like, okay, I understood.
Yeah, of course.
I couldn't fix it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was wrong with it, but I was trying. 2 weeks later, I was on the bus going to my high school, getting ready to drop off in the parking lot, and I see the car in the parking lot.
Oh, ouch.
And I come to find out that there was a senior who had transferred from Virginia Beach, who was like a whiz kid kind of guy. He kind of fixed it, and he bought it. So eventually I asked him, I said, what was wrong with this thing? He said, oh, the distributor gear had stripped. Oh, I didn't know to look for that.
Right, yeah.
You know, so I made a vow to myself that I was never going to get duped again, you know,
Gotcha.
in terms of ignorance, pure
Correct,
ignorance.
yeah.
So I pursued auto mechanics. Then I joined the military. I joined the Navy.
So how long, thank you for your service. How long did you serve?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
Out of where? Where did you go?
I joined out of Richmond, Virginia, which is, you know, middle of the state of Virginia.
Yeah.
That's where I went, and then I went to boot camp in Great Lakes.
And did you join because you had other friends or something, or you just said, like, you know what, I got nothing going on, let's just go?
Yeah, that was a good question. Back to the point, 17, I was really
Going with the flow.
I was working little construction jobs on the beach, but it was seasonal. Didn't really, I mean, I was like, you know, kind of happy. I could have, you know, just done that for a while, but
Yeah.
I knew I needed something else to do. And there wasn't a lot of industry up there. It was just a tourist type of industry, but no,
Got it.
and there was really no welding going on at that time.
Yeah.
But we were close to Norfolk, Virginia, which is about an hour away.
Okay.
And I had friends in Moayoc, which is where Blackwater is right now, and they were going in the Navy. And at first I was like, no, I want to do it.
Of course.
But after I gave it consideration, I thought, you know what? I could do this because this way I would guarantee me a place to stay, guarantee me some sort of education, further my career. I wasn't great in high school because I was just distracted.
Correct.
I had a problem with intelligence.
Yeah.
It's just you weren't just, you know, smart enough to get through all the things, and things that bothered me were, you know, as it still is today. So I took it as an opportunity to go in the military, which I was glad I did. I chose the aircraft industry version, so my job basically wound up being working on these big helicopters, you know, CH-53s, H-3s, and I also went into like a search and rescue aspect of it, where you see the guys jump out and pick people up. So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, what I was doing.
Gotcha. So when you joined, and also because of not peer pressure, just seeing friends and so on, I'm like, hey, I might as well do what some of my peers are doing. Did you join knowing that you had more of a physical or mental strength to do whatever it took to be part of it, or you just really had no clue what any of it was going to be?
Kind of a combination of both.
Yeah.
Because that was the whole point. It was a challenge. It was something completely different, and that's what drove me, knowing that no matter what, I only had 4 years to deal with it, but it opened up so many doors for me.
Gotcha.
And it just gave me more of a maturity that I was able to handle things better and stuff, and I learned a lot. Consequently, I was stationed in the Philippines for 3.5 years. So I went all over Japan, Korea, and all this stuff. And while we were on base, I had a friend who was an actual naval welder. I'm just going to say it that way. He's got another term for it.
Yeah.
And he had a car in the little workshop we had for, you know, hobby stuff. And he basically took me in there one day, and we were like, he goes, I got to weld a bracket on my muffler. I'm like, I never knew what that was. And he's like, well, there's a hood. We put on the hoods. He striked up the arc.
The sparks,
I watched it, and I was like, I was hooked.
Really?
And then I just started going in there and practice. But we didn't have a lot of scrap metal, so it was like
whatever you could find
whatever
yourself.
I could find, I was like looking at it, going, oh my God, that looks amazing. And,
it was art. Yeah.
It was just whatever we could, you know. And I was hooked, and that just, you know, that there's a lot of other stuff going on. But the point was that was the moment.
But at this time, you are mid-20s, 22, 23.
22, after I got out, I was 22.
Yeah. So, and that was, so in the Philippines, that's where you saw the sparks of the welding idea coming into place, right? And so you were there for 3.5 years, then you came back to where in the U.S.?
Well, I came back to San Diego at first.
Okay.
And then I took some courses that I wanted to be a lawyer. So I took some law courses, law school. I went to law school.
So welding sparked something, but not quite the follow that career path now.
Well, I was still, and I still am, I'm always, something interests me, I can do it. And then if I want to do something else, I do something else. And I always go back and forth.
Gotcha.
I've never been
multitasker here.
Yeah, I don't. So, but that was a time in my life that I wanted to do it. Then I decided I don't really want to do it. So then I took courses in computer science.
Gotcha.
And then I started learning programming. So then,
which I know you've shared with me before, because you know he keeps giving me all these tips. I'm like, James, just do it. I don't know what you're talking about. Just Leave me alone. Anyway,
So then, it can be really deep. I mean, I'm a humble person. I don't really have much, but I do have a lot that I've done.
yeah.
And I'm glad. I'm happy for that.
Yeah, and you got to be proud that you experienced those
Mixing with the computer science that I was pursuing, I also mixed in music. So I went classical. I wanted the classical guitar. I wanted to play piano. I did that.
things. So you didn't go the regular popular route. You went classical.
I went classical.
Why? Because it connected more with you than
Music was emotional, and I enjoyed it, and
So are you saying that you are an emotional guy,
Of
Scott?
course,
Really?
of course. It's all about the sentimentals.
Hey, there, you heard it here. Yeah, cool. So really, so you still play? You still
Oh
practice?
yeah, I play.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
pretty
that's why
cool.
I got my fingernails long on this hand.
That's pretty cool. Well, man, you see, things I didn't know, especially you guys didn't know. Now you guys do. So now you are getting all this knowledge into your tool belt. All these experiences, all these things that you just, hey, I want to do that. You go and try it, and you learn it, and you keep adding more things
But let
to
me
your
just
resume.
rephrase one thing. At that particular time, I still didn't know what I wanted to do.
And
Even the information that I was gaining at the time, it was still going over my head.
Really?
So it took a while for things to saturate back. So I would get exposure to something, get exposure to music. Even though I was okay, I wasn't.
And that was
great.
still in California still?
Yeah, and then I came over here and I continued with it. I came back to Florida just for a time. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I got here and I did some more classes. And then I started working on motorcycles. And then I stayed working on motorcycles, and then I started.
All right, so when you say you kind of started working on motorcycles, what does that mean? You were passing by a parking lot, you saw a bike, and like, maybe let me work on it?
No. My father he works on motorcycles. I kind of helped with my father a little bit, picked it up on his business, and he was doing that.
This is how I get to the real thing of how it happened. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but it could be a long story. So
I know, but trust me, if it is, then I'll just say I'll go into the next thing. Yeah.
So I did that, and I gained more because I was a mechanic. I loved working on. Mainly, I started falling in love with motorcycles because it was, something that was passionate to me.
Gotcha.
And like I said, I did it in high school. I had other trips, but I've always played my music at the same time. Then the weather came back around.
Huh? In what way?
Well, because I had to start doing fabrications. So, you remember a show called Orange
Choppers?
Choppers?
Yeah.
Before that, I was already making gas tanks. I was making,
Yeah, I remember you shared that last time I was here.
Yeah.
And you told me a little bit about, because I want you to share the story. What was it that you were putting together? Was it a hood or an awning or something? And I think you used the wrong filler or something.
Oh, that was a stainless steel awning job that I had up until that point never used the stick electrode for stainless. I had brought foolishly a 33-pound spool of 308, and I was trying to weld this thing outside with gaps,
Yeah.
and it was hopeless. It looked terrible. And
I don't think so.
A friend of mine had some 332nd 304L, I think it was.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but I remember when I did that with I had a Trailblazer.
Yeah.
It looked like TIG welds.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's it, man. I'm never going to use a MIG wire stainless again,
You guys know that I jump all over the place. I interrupt my guests, but when he was saying that earlier, it reminded me of that story. So I wanted to make sure he shared that. So now you are building all these tanks. You're in the motorcycles and you are metal fabbing, and so beyond just doing the tanks for the bikes.
So yeah, as I was doing all this stuff with the motorcycles, I fell in love with and I was like, man, I really love welding again. And the first machine I bought was a Snap-on Muscle MIG, I believe it was Muscle MIG 250 or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I was able to finance it off the truck.
I see.
And that made it easy. I didn't have the money to,
Yeah.
So I was
go to the big colors.
Right.
Yeah.
I was doing that. Plus I was playing music on the side. I was into photography. I was shooting pictures for people.
Oh yeah,
on albums.
correct. That's another thing
I got into photography, and I was shooting people because I knew people in the music industry who were shooting pictures they put on the albums, and it was a real fun thing to go into Peaches. There was a record store at the time, and see some of my work on the album. Yeah. So I got into that, and I just had a lot of fun. And then the welding started picking up, and I started getting more jobs from the customers that had motorcycles.
Okay.
And they were giving me jobs
Outside of motorcycle jobs.
motorcycles, yes,
Gotcha.
yes, because they knew.
He can glue these things together.
Right,
Yeah.
and because I was pretty much
Meticulous.
yes, to my detriment most of the time. I
Yeah.
was just like, I gotta, and so some people picked up on that and they gave me opportunities to do stuff, like, oh, can you weld this? Can you make this frame for my, started on like airboat frames, or modify. I want to put a Ford engine on it. It used to have a Continental. Can we modify it? So I started doing that.
So were you that kind of guy that, they would give you a project, would you sit and start drawing things?
Sometimes, yes.
Or you just kind of went like...
Yeah, sometimes, but I will say I'm thankful that my father was kind of around. He's a mechanical engineer, so he already
understood structures.
Yeah, so I grew up kind of like, even though I didn't live with him growing up, but when I started hanging out more with him, I got to get that.
Just organically.
Yeah, I got to think a little bit more. I could basically orchestrate a job in my head from start to finish and see all the problems.
Do the blueprints in your head, yeah.
Right, and I made it that a habit, even in bigger jobs that I had down the road, that I was able to see the complications that could arise where other people would be clueless, I learned early on that a lot of good welders choose for whatever reason to remain ignorant of things, and that always bothered me. And I would get to them and I'm like, there's so much out here in this welding industry that you don't have to settle and just take orders all day. You can actually improve yourself.
Yeah, become your own thing. Yeah.
And so, that was an early on observation that I made, even with my colleagues or my people in the industry that I was working at the time in the late 90s, early 2000s. That's what it was like. There's a lot of good welders, but they were just dead set and they won't be able to understand how to set the machines up properly. And I recognized that quickly. But I wasn't the type.
Set it and forget it, and this is how I do everything I do.
Right. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't having that. I had to learn more. I had to go. So I researched AWS.
Yeah.
I found out about them. At that time, there was no computers. It was all pamphlets and stuff.
Yeah.
And
so you found out about the American Welding Society on your own before you were a welding instructor.
Yes.
All right, because you are doing jobs out there, and the reason why you found or you wanted to find something, it was to see if you could get more information about how to properly do things?
Well, no, it was more about like certification at the time.
Okay.
And that's kind of like what I was exploring.
Gotcha.
And back then they were on the Lejeune Road, so you had to go down.
So it goes back, yeah.
So I went into that place. And
because you are a CWI. Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah.
And now you've been a CWI for how long? So
I don't remember.
Yeah.
2000 and something.
All right.
I don't remember.
Years,
I don't remember. I think I'm coming up on my second or third 9 year coming up. I don't know. I don't remember. It's going by too fast.
Hey, it's the sparks. It gets to people.
Yeah. I was ultimately going to try to go into welding engineering, but because of my music love, I didn't really want to go back in and finish up a degree in engineering. So I just steered away from that, and I wanted to have the best of both worlds. In other words, so I could still enjoy my passions, but not
make money.
And make money because once I started my business and my welding business, I started making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I had a lot of good clients, a lot of good, connections, and it was all about connections. When I first started, I put a little sticker. I had a little magnet sticker on my, like how realtors do sometimes. I put it on my door. Mobile welding. I started out with a mobile welding setup, and I had a little shop, and I was going out there welding gates at restaurants, and whatever
he paid.
But I found that nobody was giving me calls except for people behind me on the interstate. Hey, I see your number. Can you come out to my house and weld my mailbox or something? Gotcha. I'm like, man, I need to make. So I yanked those things off, and back then what I did was, I said I know a lot of people, but I need to know more people. So what I did was I typed up back in the day with word processors. I typed up a introductory level, a letter of my business, and I made business cards at that time. I think I don't know if Kinko's was there, Office Depot, but anyways, I made a bunch of those business cards, and I went to the Yellow Pages, Yellow Pages are a book that we used to
Yeah,
have.
by the way, guys, yeah, just in case you guys don't know, yeah.
I went to the Yellow Pages and I looked at all the general contractors that were available between,
A certain area.
all the Tri-County area.
Yeah,
And I paid them all a visit. First, I mailed them letters.
yeah.
And I kept copies. I had like thousands of these things.
Really well.
And I would drive to these businesses and I would speak to the manager or speak to the owner. And I say, here's the letter. I just want to introduce myself.
Yeah.
And 9 times, and not to say that often, but a lot of times the guy would be like, yeah, my welder just left and I'm not happy with him. Here's a set of plans. Can you do this job? It could be columns or whatever it was for whatever project. And I was taking it.
Hey.
And that's how I build connections. It was about networking. That's what I discovered early. It was like it wasn't about my advertisement, my marketing.
No,
it was strictly about making elbows to elbows, face-to-face encounters.
And what's crazy is that that's still the same MO nowadays. Yeah, even though now we can Google and search things very quickly, but there's nothing like here right now. There's something that I can pick up just body language and see something in your face. That on a call or video call, it's just a small portion of what you really get here.
Yeah.
Person to person. So I totally get that. So how long did you do that on your own before you became a welding instructor?
Okay, so I was doing that through the whole early part of the 2000s. A lot of good jobs. I did almost every single hospital from here to Homestead. I was a vendor for the post office for quite a while. So anything that
the rails for the
anything from Ocala down to the Keys, I probably built the rails for it or something.
Gotcha.
Plus, I had big construction jobs going on, and what I would do is I would have guys I would pick up on the job site that I would recognize that had some potential. Sometimes they want to go on their lunch break. They want to come over and have me show. So I picked these guys up and teach them. So I got rid of having technical employees, but what I did was I taught them how to get their own business.
Gotcha.
Their W-9s.
Yeah.
And they would work for me as a subcontractor as well. So they made money, I made money.
Correct. It's a win-win. You took care of a bigger area, more customers and all that.
Right. So I didn't have
one person to do all that.
Right. So, and even though I was the kind of guy I had to do it all, I was like, it's got to be my way.
Yeah.
I had to learn to break away from that, and that took a little bit.
It does. It does. Been there before too. Yep.
So somewhere in the early 2000s, I decided an opportunity came up for me to become a CWI. I looked into it. I don't remember exact the details. It's so long ago. Got the books mailed to me, and I started studying it. I was like, I know this. I know that. I know what's going on.
You've been exposed to it,
yeah,
right?
it's not nothing. It's some stuff I hadn't done any X-ray or anything, but it was like I can navigate this because I already understood building codes.
Correct.
And if you understand a building code, it's kind of codes and standards are similar. They got a scope. They got, all these things are kind of laid out the same way. So, but I chose the 1104 to do my test on because it was a thinner book. And I thought this would be easier than the D1.1.
I'll be done,
Yeah, so I took that test, and it was actually very hard. Very hard. But I highlighted it. I worked hard on it. And the thing I liked about that code book was it allowed for repairs of cracks and stuff. They have a section in the appendix, which which the D1 doesn't have or didn't have at the time. So I enjoyed that portion of it.
So as you finding yourself, checking these things, whether it's by referral, becoming an actual CWI, and you are seeing organically teaching without actually thinking that you are going to become a welding instructor, right? You
see it,
Yeah. So he's like, okay, so I'm kind of doing this already,
right.
on my own time. Was there a long time before you went into what you do now, and how did that transition happen, and why?
Well, what happened was during about 2007, 2008, the economy was terrible. I was absolutely horrible. All my projects, my last job I bid on was over $1 million.
Housing just...
It just was on standstill. I had things to pay. You start running out of money quick.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I had some friends that worked in Alaska, I was actually going to go to Texas.
Really?
I was sitting in a Wendy's.
Oh,
eating a Frosty and some French fries. And I was like waiting for a call from Texas because I had contacted somebody. And I also had the what was that magazine? It was this industry magazine that has job listings for different things, and I just wanted to go out there. I was going to either weld or I was going to inspect. One of those two was my goal.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have any other choice.
Lifesaver, yeah.
I got to get out of here. I got to do something because it was just dead here. You know, everything was bad. Got a call from the teacher here that was retiring, and the reason I knew them is because I was on their advisory committee.
I see.
And I had been on there for a while, so they knew me.
So your name was around.
Yeah,
already.
so they knew me, and he just called me. Had he called me a year before, I would have never taken it because of the money.
Desperation.
You know. Yeah.
Desperation.
I was like, well, this would give me an opportunity to stay here, not, you know. And
Pack and go.
And I was like, well, I'll just take it as it, see how it goes. You know?
And how long ago was this?
2008. November 5th of 2008.
So that's almost 14 years or so that you've been here at McFatter.
Yeah.
See how I did that math really quick? Even if it's wrong, I just did numbers. Yeah.
They're pretty good.
Yeah, well, hey, sometimes I get it. I get it. So 14 years here, and now you went from looking at some inspections out there as a CWI and teaching, but not in the way that a curriculum has to be taught.
Well, yes, I had to use a curriculum because the state generates a curriculum that we have to follow.
Gotcha.
But there's always a but. There's an adjustment. There's a tolerance you can apply because you have to, otherwise you'll go crazy. For example, Oscar, who you interviewed before,
correct.
He's facing some of that now, where sometimes you go in and you think, oh my gosh, the curriculum is this, but you understand you can't possibly pull it off that way. You have to figure out other. You have to be innovative. You have to think on your feet.
Correct.
And that's kind of like what I estimated my first. The first big mistake I made when I first started teaching here was
to teach.
Was to teach, exactly. Was to teach. Was to run in there and
let me
show you the way. Let me show you how to do it. Let me show you this. Let me show you that. And I had some pretty good welders.
Yeah.
And when it got time for them to graduate, and I wanted to get them some jobs.
Yeah.
After a couple weeks, my friends, the guys who employed him, were calling me like, "This guy doesn't know how to set up a machine. This guy doesn't know how to think for himself." A lot of these things, embarrassing things.
Of course, because now it's coming back to you.
Right. So I said, what are these guys lacking? They're lacking the wherewithal to think for themselves.
Yeah, and it's the common sense of
bookwork. They don't want to.
They learn a different way.
They got to learn it, and you have to be able to read somebody
yourself,
and adapt. Right. But still, at the same time, they've got to work at it. They've got to learn. They've got to learn to think for themselves, and that's one of the things that's lacking in a lot of them.
But now, 14 years later, if you had to look at the kind of students that you were running into, and the kind of students that you were 7 years in, and now 14 years later, have you seen a difference in the kind of students or the way they approach the programs or the welding industry, or it's pretty much the same? It's the same.
The story remains the same.
Really?
All the time. It's never changed. There's always a group of students that are here because their parents want them to be here. They don't want to be here. They don't want to let their parents down, but they don't know how to tell them.
See, that's sad.
There's a lot of students who just don't have good work ethics at all. And then there's a handful that are just phenomenal.
Yeah.
They can get done with anything on the curriculum. They're asking for more. You know? So the curriculum itself is just a guideline that we have to meet. But sometimes it's like they can't meet it. And does that mean that person is unworthy? No. Because what I have found was, first of all, I don't have an ego. I had to learn to get rid of that. Yeah. So I have to be very compassionate with these guys, some of them. I don't babysit them.
Yeah, correct.
And I tell them straight when it needs to be done. But I have to understand that sometimes if I get a feeling of where they're coming from, what their history is, whatever it is, it's still no excuse. If they're here, they have a reason to pull themselves up. Correct. And they can make some good money if they want to. Yeah. But if they don't want to, I can't force them. Correct. And I think, my personal opinion on any good welder, it takes roughly about 3 years before they really settle in. And when you have a school that you get pumped out in only a year or less, you're not really ready. They need to have some problems to solve outside, mistakes on their own, and time to reflect and time to get better. And I find the ones that are really, really knowledgeable and have been doing it for at least 3 years minimum. But if they just pop out of a school, there's still that's the
same kind of job you're gonna see out there,
right? And they're not used to it, or they might get they don't know, or
discouraged,
they don't. They get discouraged.
What's the age group? Have you seen the age group change? Not the way that they approach the class itself, but have you seen the age group change from, is it being consistent, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or now you see more of this or more of that?
Female aspects has always been pretty much the same. I've always had girls in my class at, 2 or 3 per semester.
Gotcha. So it's still at 10-15%.
Yeah, it's nothing has changed there.
Okay.
But the question on what type of student age group I've got ages from, I've got high school, as well as people that are in their 60s.
Really?
And a lot of times my worst problems are the guys that are older than me. Because one is they need to wear glasses. And let me tell you what, when you're trying to explain to somebody that they need to wear glasses and they don't want to wear glasses and they can't see, they cannot weld.
And that beat,
I can tell you at least a half a dozen times what I've had battle it out with a student who was older than me. First of all, there's that feeling of contention, like you shouldn't be showing me.
I've done this, I've been doing this, or I did this before you were.
Right. So I dealt with a lot of that when I was, several years ago. But now it's not so much. But
well, now it helps that you got white hair everywhere. So even if you are, it kind of helps.
Right. But I've had every one of them come to me, whether it's 3 months to 6 months. They've all come back and thank me for recommending them to go get their eyes checked.
Really?
Because now they got glasses, and now their welds are actually looking presentable. Where before, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, they just didn't want to listen. I said, I wear glasses now. I mean, it's inevitable.
You guys saw that. I took mine off.
I got 20/20 vision, but I still can't see up close like I used to. I can't weld stainless like I used to. I admit it. I can't do it.
But now let's talk about McFatter School as a whole. How many days students usually per, how many shifts do you guys have?
That's a crazy question.
Oh, well, all right. I thought it was an okay question.
Well, let's see. We have semesters.
Okay.
So similar to colleges, we have semesters. And I have roughly around 45 to 50 students per semester.
Okay.
That go through, and that semester might last for 18 weeks, or it might last for that particular student another 18 weeks.
Gotcha.
So and it comes and goes. So in August I get some, January I get some, but it's always around 45, 50 students, including day and night.
McFatter helping with job placement,
McFatter will, but I push it for them to do it. Because part of the curriculum is they have to do job searches, they have to do and I have to, get them to
They got to get live ready.
Yeah, and I tell them I said, go out there and make a visit. Don't just sit there and Google Indeed and hope that they're going to answer you. I said, go out to the job, find a welding shop, walk up there, see what's going on, make eye contact with the person, pick up a broom or say, hey, can I help you in this shop or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they come back and like, man, they're going to hire me,
What a concept.
Right. It's like I didn't have to.
Oh, you weren't?
Right, because there's this tendency with the younger generation to just sit back and let somebody else
I
do it
emailed
for
them. I should hear back from them in the next
because
year.
they've got this concept, these young kids got this concept that if they just sit quiet enough and not say nothing, their parents will eventually do it for them. They've learned to do that. And then so they got this, you know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. And I kind of get these guys that exhibit those type of characteristics.
Of course.
And I try to just get them to, think for themselves.
If there was something, that one thing that you could say that you would change if you had the power to change in the educational side of things, as you have seen it in the last 14 years, what would that be?
More of a recognition that a lot of us teachers can't produce what they're expecting.
Huh, interesting.
Because they're the unknown factor of the student
human itself.
Yeah, and so it's too clinical. A lot of times it's too clinical, meaning it has to be
too black and white.
Right, back to the point of when we were talking about the people that are creating the curriculum and stuff. They're all meaning well, there's nothing wrong with that, but the point is the ones that are making we can only have this much time for this particular curriculum, the thing is, that does work on some students. That's an ideal student, just like blood pressure medicine, right?
Right, yeah.
120/80, but not everybody's going to have that, range.
Correct.
But that's the kind of situation.
Mentality that's behind
So
it.
sometimes teachers, new teachers in particular, don't understand that they have some leeway to work with it, but they take it too literal and they
Well,
cause
I think
themselves
they
a lot
get
of stress.
scared about job
Yeah,
security.
they get
You know,
stressed.
they haven't pushed the boundaries.
Right.
They haven't talked to other seasoned instructors.
It's the side that puts pressure on some of the teachers to get them to produce things they can't do, and it causes a lot of stress, a lot of stress with teachers. I've observed with my students, if I give them the opportunity to do it themselves, a lot of times they produce it. If I pressure them, for example, let me give an inspection example. Even when I first started, I was still doing inspections, and I still do. Companies hire me to go out and inspect 5 or 6 welders on the job site. They're scared. They're freaked out that I'm here to look at them. They're intimidated. They're like, "What is this?"
Instead of like, oh wow, I'm gonna get a chance to maybe learn or see how good I am.
Right. And of course, because I'm pretty stern, when I foresee they don't know how to set up the machine, I'm already irritated, and I'm like, what are you doing here? But for the most part, if they do know, and they're just nervous, I try to break the ice and calm them down and relax, and I don't put a lot of pressure on them. I'm not standing over their shoulder, watching what they're doing, every aspect of it. So I make them relax. So a lot of times the students, they want that too, or they don't know they want that. They they don't know what to do, And a lot of times I think that actually helps in this industry. After that, they blossom. They turn into what they are, And I've had them come back time after time thanking me, for putting up with me or allowing me to do this, and they change, So I look at it as, if we've got this big demand of an umbrella of welders needed, a lot of times you have to nurture the person. You have to be able to. You have to have a gift for teaching, or I'm going to say teaching, but you have to have a gift for observing people, understanding empathy, exactly, empathy, understanding those things, and knowing how to let them work it out themselves, and be a coach, like a baseball coach. You have to be a coach, a good cheerleader.
They have to strike out, so you can talk about.
And I know some people will say, "Oh, I ain't gonna do that." And I get it.
To each his own.
Yeah, to each his own.
I think that it's teaching. We all know, whatever teaching you do at whatever level, sometimes it's an opportunity to make money when you're young, because you were struggling, or you didn't know what the next thing was going to be, so it becomes like an emergency exit. But then you actually do fall in love with the results of seeing people make it to the next level, and knowing that you had something to do with that. Like, that reward that you get back, that ROI, it's amazing. But at the end of the day, we know that teaching is not about the money, because it's not. And the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is because I want to, now I've been in the industry for 13 years, and I'm at the bottom level of the industry, and that's okay. But I do love every time I get a chance to talk to anyone or any youth and give them some sort of a idea or light. It's like, hey, you don't have to settle just for one of these things in the welding industry. There's 1,000 other things that you can do and still call yourself that you are part of the welding industry. So to see you and other instructors out there trying to push the industry, trying to put quality welders out there and helping them become just a better person at the same time, it speaks volumes to me, because I was very attached to coaching and teaching the youth. So I thank you for that, because it's needed, and we have to spend more time teaching what we know, because then what's the purpose of this whole thing, right? And you die with all that knowledge in you just because you don't know how to talk to that next generation, right?
I think the appeal of welding, which I can relate to, as I felt it, was you get this sense of nobody's going to bother you. And you're going to be in there in your own little world, and you can do what you want, and nobody's going to bother you. You don't have to deal with a lot of stuff.
I can see that.
But I say the detriment, because to be successful, you have to network. You have to be in evolve and understand how to talk to people and soft
You are
skills and
I've
everything.
always told everyone, you are selling yourself. So every time you know you are thinking like, well, I'm going to be working on a cubicle by myself, or I'm going to be a welder somewhere under a bridge. Well, how do you think you're going to get that job? You know, how do you think you're going to charge your fees? How do you think you're going to sell your business? You have to sell yourself. You know, learn how to talk to people, learn how to communicate.
And as far as employers, I always coach my students before they go. Listen, your responsibility is to make that company money.
Correct.
And your best opportunity in that interview is to not gloat on your skills,
Right.
but turn the tables and
What's your
direct
need?
it.
How can I help you with those needs?
Exactly. That's exactly what I do. And that's how I make them understand that, because
I can solve your problem.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get it. Well, Mr. Scott, James, thank you so much for allowing me to sit down with you. And I know this can go on and on. I mean, the guy has so much history, but I try to keep it all condensed and get something out of it. I want to thank you for everything you do, for being an instructor, for always being open to all the section meetings and everything that we do here for AWS, and kind of just promoting the industry as a whole. And just for always being cool. You know, you're a cool dude. And guys, please, whose shirt is that? Oh, bam! That's bling right there, guys.
Yeah.
Guys, you know how this works. I hope you guys get something out of this. It's about the welding industry. It's about the people in the welding industry and everything they do to promote it. And hopefully we can spark the light into somebody else out there and find an avenue in this amazing industry. So thank you very much. Thank you again.
No problem.
Guys, I'll see you somewhere else with somebody else. And just keep watching, keep supporting, because it's for everyone out there. Thank you. Take care.